Have you ever actually stopped to think about the wild journey a single dollar, euro, or yen takes the second it leaves its home country? I mean, every single day, literally trillions of dollars are zipping across borders. They're building factories, they're buying stocks, and they are completely reshaping local economies. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're following the money, and we're diving deep into the mechanics of foreign investment. We're going to decode this massive, sometimes kind of intimidating world together.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the world of foreign investment. Second, FDI versus FPI explained. Third, how money enters India. Fourth, why foreign investment matters. Fifth, navigating global trade agreements. And finally, number 6, the reality of trade barriers. I promise, we're going to break down all this dense economic jargon step by step so you walk away with a crystal clear understanding.
Let's just jump right into Section 1, the world of foreign investment, looking beyond domestic borders. I really want you to think about what actually happens when a company looks outside its own country. At its most basic, foundational level, foreign investment is, well, exactly what it sounds like. It's when a company, or even a whole government, takes its capital and invests it into a completely different country. Now, why do they do this? They might be hunting for raw materials they just don't have at home. Maybe they want to expand their sales footprint to a totally new population. Or they're just trying to build a truly global, multinational brand presence. To put this into perspective, we are talking about global cash flows that regularly top $1 trillion every single year. It is the ultimate financial web.
Now, trying to track $1 trillion sounds like an absolute nightmare, right? That's exactly why the concepts we're digging into today are grounded in established academic frameworks, like the ones set up by the International Monetary Fund. Grasping these structures is absolutely crucial if we really want to understand how these massive global capital flows are organized, tracked, and ultimately, how they actually impact our day-to-day lives.
And that brings us to Section 2, FDI versus FPI. We're going to use what I like to call the commitment metaphor, 10%. Now, this isn't just some random slice of the pie. According to the IMF, this is the magic threshold. If an investor from one country scoops up at least 10% of the equity or voting rights in a foreign company, boom, that investment officially becomes direct. That specific percentage represents a lasting, substantial amount of management control.
So let's stack them up side by side using that commitment metaphor. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, is basically like buying a house and moving into the neighborhood. You have lasting management control. You're physically building a plant, hauling in machinery, and you are rolling up your sleeves to handle actual production and marketing. You've got a controlling interest. Foreign portfolio investment, or FPI, on the flip side, that's like just booking a stay in a hotel. You're acquiring shares or handing out loans just to earn dividends or interest. You aren't building a factory. You have zero direct involvement in daily production. You are purely there for the financial return, not to run the business. While FDI and FPI are the heavy hitters, foreign money can definitely take a few other interesting shapes. For instance, we've got foreign institutional investment, or FII. Think of your massive hedge funds, insurance companies, and mutual funds. In India alone, the securities regulator actually has over 1,450 of these registered. Then, taking a slight step over, you have qualified foreign investors, or QFIs. These are individuals or groups that meet super strict international financial standards and can invest directly without messing with complex FII subaccounts. And finally, depository receipts. These are absolutely brilliant financial instruments. A local share is held by a bank, and a receipt for that exact share gets traded as a negotiable security in places like New York or London. Interestingly enough, in the Indian context, these are actually treated as a form of FDI.
Moving on to Section 3, how money enters India and the bouncers at the door.
So we know what the money is, but how does it actually get inside a country's financial system? Well, think of the Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999, FEMA for short, as the ultimate gatekeeper for India's economy. Sure, there are sector-specific policies and international treaties, but FEMA is the primary codified rulebook dictating exactly how foreign investment has to behave the second it crosses the border. And that gatekeeper essentially funnels investors down one of two paths. The first is the automatic route. Think of this as the green light. A foreign investor can pour their money in without needing to ask for government approval first. It's fast, it's efficient, and it really encourages quick investment. The second path is the government route. Think of this as a strict stop and check. For certain sensitive areas of the economy, prior government approval is absolutely mandatory before a single cent is allowed to enter. Let's look at how this actually plays out in a real-world matrix. Notice how a country strategically opens and closes its doors. Look at medical devices or single-brand retail. They allow 100% foreign ownership automatically.
They want that capital and that tech fast. Aviation allows 49% automatically. But look at banking in the public sector. That requires the strict government route, and even then, they cap the limit at 20%. And then, of course, you've got the totally prohibited sectors, zero foreign investment allowed. We're talking businesses like lottery and chit funds or manufacturing cigars and cigarettes. It is a highly calculated balancing act.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, why foreign investment matters and the tangible benefits. Honestly, why do governments even want this foreign money in the first place?
Well, to understand why, you have to look at domestic realities. In India, for example, the domestic savings rate sits around 32%. Now, that might sound pretty decent on paper, but for a rapidly developing, massive economy that literally needs to build entire cities from scratch, it's just not enough. There simply isn't enough domestic money sitting in the local banks to fund the sheer scale of growth they need. Foreign investment acts as this vital, absolutely necessary complement to fill that huge gap.
First off, let's talk physical impact. When foreign money flows in, it directly strengthens infrastructure and boosts the physical assets of domestic companies. Beyond that, it leads to an increase in productivity and employment, which in turn raises per capita income, meaning everyday citizens can consume more. But hey, it's not just about cash. It's about brains too. FDI brings in cutting-edge technology and breeds local innovation. Next, these new hyper-efficient companies boost exports, which helps create a balance of payment surplus. And the ultimate result? All this can actually cause the local currency, the rupee, to appreciate against the dollar, giving the central bank, the RBI, more foreign exchange reserves so they can step in and stabilize the market if they need to. It's basically a massive, positive economic engine.
Because those benefits are just so huge, let's step into Section 5, navigating global trade agreements and greasing the wheels of movement. There's an actual timeline, like a ladder of global integration. I mean, countries don't just erase their borders overnight. They usually start with a simple handshake, a partial scope agreement. Then, they might upgrade to a free trade agreement, like the one between India and ASEAN, which slashes tariffs on a bunch of goods. Next up is a custom union, where countries not only trade freely with each other, but also adopt a common external tariff. Think of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Then we had a common market, like Mercosur in South America. This is a big deal, because it allows the free movement of labor and capital, not just physical goods. And finally, you have the deepest level of integration, an economic union, like the European Union, where countries literally share a single market and, a lot of times, a single currency.
But right alongside trade, investors really need to feel safe. If I'm dropping millions to build a factory in another country, I need rock-solid assurance that the rules aren't going to suddenly change on me. That's exactly where BIPAs come in, bilateral investment promotion and protection agreements. These are legally binding treaties between two governments, ensuring that investors from both sides get fair, equitable, and reciprocal protection. It basically stops governments from just unfairly seizing assets. To give you a bit of historical context, India signed its very first BIPA with the United Kingdom way back in 1994. That was a huge signal to the world that its markets were finally becoming safer for global capital.
But here is Section 6, the reality of trade barriers. And guys, this is the ultimate plot twist.
Because in the real, messy world of international economics, countries will sometimes just suddenly throw up a brick wall. So I want you to consider this scenario for a second. What actually happens to a country when a foreign product arriving at its ports is just way too cheap?
Let's take macroeconomic theory right into the laundry room. Consider the South Korean washing machine dilemma. South Korea has ridiculously efficient manufacturing. Now, if brands like LG export washing machines to India and sell them at a drastically cheaper price than any local manufacturer could ever possibly match, the local market just gets flooded. The local Indian companies simply cannot compete. It hampers their growth and it puts a ton of local manufacturing jobs at severe risk.
So when this happens, governments pull a lever and utilize the mechanism of trade barriers. Rather than just sitting back and watching the local industry collapse, the government steps in. They impose specific rules or tariffs on those imports. By taxing that South Korean washing machine at the border, the government artificially inflates its price on the store shelf. The foreign good instantly becomes more costly. And what's the result? The everyday consumer, just looking at the price tags in the store, is now economically driven to buy the relatively cheaper, locally produced product. It is a highly effective tool used all over the globe to protect domestic workers and ensure that local industries aren't entirely wiped off the map by foreign hyper-efficiency. Which brings us to the ultimate tightrope walk of global economics. Foreign investment brings the cash, the tech, and the infrastructure that countries desperately need to survive and thrive.
But if it's left completely unchecked, it can entirely hollow out the very domestic industries a nation relies on. So the next time you look at the news and see global capital flowing across borders, I want you to ask yourself, how do governments perfectly balance the massive, undeniable benefits of open foreign investment with the vital survival of their own local industries? It is a complex, constantly shifting puzzle, and I really hope this explainer has given you the framework to start solving it. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.